Hello and welcome to another Learning Boost story. I'm Mr. Donald Hewitt. Today I'm going to read a story, but I'm going to do a little bit more than that. I'm going to pause and ask questions throughout the story so that you and your child can discuss the questions and get a bit more out of the story too. A little pause symbol will appear in the top corner up here. Just pause the video at that point, discuss the questions with your child and then press play again. Also, to help your child get more out of the story, I've chosen 6 special words. These words are words that might come up in life in lots of different ways, and it's a nice way to help your child extend their vocabulary. That's really the bank of words that they know and understand and can use in their everyday life. This story has also got lots of rhyming words because it's a rhyming story. So it'd be good to talk to your child before you start about what a rhyming word is. Think about words that end the same way and you could give them some examples. Can they spot some rhymes throughout the story too? The 6 words I've chosen for you, I'd like you to play some games with. So you could clap out the syllables. If your word was magnificent, you could clap them out. Magnificent. That's got 4 syllables in it. The syllables are really just the beat in a word as you say them. You could also find the initial sound for the word as well. So if it's magnificent, the initial sound is mm. We don't use the letter name so much, rather just the sound, because that's what's going to help our children when they are learning to read and write at a young age. So pause the video now, look down at our 6 special words we've chosen and discuss them together. At the end of the video, I've also got some great activity ideas that you could try at home. So today we're going to enjoy this wonderful book. It's called The Smartest Giant in Town. The author is Julia Donaldson and the illustrator is Axel Scheffler, and it was published by Macmillan Children's Books. You might recognise the names Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler because they worked together to create The Gruffalo and many other favourite stories too. So let's get reading. George was a giant, the scruffiest giant in town. He always wore the same pair of old brown sandals and the same old patched-up gown. "I wish I wasn't the scruffiest giant in town," he said sadly. "Can you point to George? How many giants can you see?" But one day, George noticed a new shop. It was full of smart clothes, so he bought a smart shirt, a smart pair of trousers, a smart belt, a smart stripy tie, some smart socks with diamonds up the sides, and a pair of smart shiny shoes. "Now I'm the smartest giant in town," he said proudly. What was so special about the shop? What does a pair mean? George left his old clothes behind in the shop. He was about to go home when he heard a sound. On the pavement stood a giraffe who was sniffing sadly. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's my neck," said the giraffe. "It's so very long and so very cold. I wish I had a long, warm scarf." Why do you think George left his old clothes at the shop? Who did George meet on the pavement? "Cheer up," said George, and he took off his stripy tie. "It didn't match my socks anyway," he said, as he wound it round and round the giraffe's neck. It made a wonderful scarf. "Thank you," said the giraffe. As George strode towards home, he sang to himself, "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe, but look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." Why do you think George gave the giraffe his tie? What is this lady doing? George came to a river. On a boat stood a goat who was bleating loudly. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's my sail," said the goat. "It blew away in a storm. I wish I had a strong new sail for my boat." How do you think the goat feels? Can you think of a word which rhymes with goat? "Cheer up," said George, and he took off his new white shirt. "It kept coming untucked anyway," he said as he tied it to the mast of the goat's boat. "It made a magnificent sail." "Thank you," said the goat. George strode on, singing to himself. "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." Can you point to a car in the picture? Can you find something else that moves? George came to a tiny, ruined house. Beside the house stood a white mouse with lots of baby mice. They were all squeaking. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's our house," squeaked the mother mouse. "It burned down and now we have nowhere to live. I wish we had a nice new house." Why do the mice have nowhere to live? What noise were the mice making? "Cheer up," said George, and he took off one of his shiny shoes. "It was giving me blisters anyway," he said, as the mouse and her babies scrambled inside. The shoe made a perfect home for them. "Thank you," they squeaked. George had to hop along the road now, but he didn't mind. As he hopped, he sang to himself. "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." Were George's new shoes comfortable? Why do you think that? George came to a campsite. Beside a tent stood a fox who was crying. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's my sleeping bag," said the fox. I dropped it in a puddle. I wish I had a warm, dry sleeping bag." What is a campsite? Why was the fox crying? "Cheer up," said George, and he took off one of his socks with the diamonds up the side. "It was tickling my toes anyway," he said, as the fox snuggled into it. It made a very fine sleeping bag. "Thank you," said the fox. George hopped along, singing to himself. "My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. But look me up and down, I'm the smartest giant in town." What colours are on the sock? Can you think of two words that rhyme from George's song? George came to a big, squelchy bog. Beside the bog stood a dog who was howling. "What's the matter?" asked George. "It's this bog," said the dog. "I need to get across, but I keep getting stuck in the mud. I wish there was a safe, dry path." Why do you think the dog wanted to cross the bog? What do you think George will do? "Cheer up," said George, and he took off his smart new belt. "It was squashing my tummy anyway," he said as he laid it down over the bog. It made an excellent path. "Thank you," said the dog. The wind started to blow, but George didn't mind. He hopped on, singing to himself.
My tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. My shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. My shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of my socks is a bed for a fox. My belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog. But my trousers are falling down. I'm the coldest giant in town. How did the weather change? Why did George's trousers fall down? Suddenly, George felt sad and shivery, and not at all smart. He stood on one foot and thought, I'll have to go back to the shop and buy some more clothes, he decided. He turned round and hopped all the way back to the shop. Why was George going back to the shop? But when he got there, it was closed. Oh no, cried George. He sank down onto the doorstep and a tear ran down his nose. He felt as sad as all the animals he'd met on his way home. Then out of the corner of his eye, he saw a bag with something familiar poking out of the top. George took a closer look. My gown, he yelled. My dear old gown and sandals. George put them on. He felt wonderfully comfortable. I'm the cosiest giant in town, he cried, and he danced back home along the road. Why did George feel sad when he got back to the shop? What did George find in the bag? Outside his front door stood all the animals he had helped. They were carrying an enormous present. Come on, George, they said. Open it. George untied the ribbon. Inside was a beautiful gold paper crown and a card. Look inside the card, George, said the animals. George put the crown on his head and opened the card. Inside it, it said, Your tie is a scarf for a cold giraffe. Your shirt's on a boat as a sail for a goat. Your shoe is a house for a little white mouse. One of your socks is a bed for a fox. Your belt helped a dog who was crossing a bog. So here is a very fine crown to go with the sandals and gown of the kindest giant in town. Who was waiting for George when he got home? Why did the animals give George a present?
Now for some activities that you can try at home with your child. So at the start of our story, our giant George, he got some new clothes and he loved getting dressed up all fancy. So why not have fun with your child around dressing up at home? Children often like to try on bigger clothes that belong to their parents. Maybe they could put on a shirt or a blouse, try those tricky buttons as well. Try practicing with zips and belts and things like this too. It's great fun, but your child will also be developing those important independence skills that will be good when they go to nursery or to school as well. To top it off, you could top it off with a crown. Why not make a paper crown for your giant to wear? I've made this one here just very simply with an A4 piece of paper. I've drawn a big zigzag down the middle, and you could get your child to cut the zigzag out carefully, take the two parts, stick them together to make a special crown. We've also got stripy socks in our story. We talk a lot about patterns at school and nursery as well, so perhaps your child could go on a pattern hunt. How many stripy things can they find around your house or out and about when they're out for a walk? Could they take photos of them or collect them together? Finally, a lovely idea with this book is it ends with a lovely thank you letter from the animals. So why not think of someone that has done something nice for you at home and send them a special note? You could draw them a picture, make a card, write a letter. It's a great way of encouraging your children to do mark making for a real purpose too.